Everyone says they want league-winning upside, but most drafters panic as soon as it looks risky. These 5 picks, they don't just have the ceiling, they're built to break your league if you're bold enough to take a swing. I keep trying to convince myself that last year was the breakout, but the more I look at it, the more I think we still haven't seen the true ceiling for Nico Collins. He's going at the 1-2 turn right now, wide receiver 5 on most boards, and yeah, that's a huge jump from where he was, but for some reason it still feels a bit cautious, and I keep asking myself, why doesn't Nico feel like enough? Because 1,000 yards in 12 games doesn't sound elite until you realize that he was getting targeted as a true number 1 on nearly a third of the routes that he was running. And then you see that he was top 3 in yards per route run. And that's the part that I can't shake. Every time I look deeper, the numbers don't just hold, they're getting louder. So I'm stuck wondering, is wide receiver 5 actually where he belongs? Or are we just too scared to say that he might already be a top 3 wide receiver in the entire league? There's something about wide receiver 5 that still makes me hesitate, not because the profile isn't strong, but because it feels too strong. 17.6 points per game, over a third of the team's targets, nearly a 40% target share in the red zone, almost 60% of the end zone looks. And that's not wide receiver 1 usage, that's the offense runs through me type of usage. And I keep thinking back to how I actually framed this, maybe we haven't seen the true ceiling. But what if that's not the problem? What if the part that I'm scared to say out loud is that we did already see it, we just don't want to believe that it was real? Because breakouts aren't supposed to look like this, they're supposed to look noisy, up and down, fluky. But this was clean. This was efficient. Dare I say this was repeatable? And that's what keeps messing with me. Every time I'm looking for the catch, but every time I talk myself out of it because the numbers just pull me deeper in. But here's where it started to flip for me. At first, I kept telling myself he was just a great breakout story. The kind of guy who beats his ADP, flashes wide receiver 1 usage, and then comes back to earth. And then I look closer, Stephon Diggs is gone. Tank Dell, obviously he's out this year. And the rookies, not really a threat. If anything, they're just kind of traffic, and we're not scared of Christian Kirk. Suddenly, Nico isn't just the wide receiver 1, he's the only option that matters. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't waiting to see if he could break out again, I was just scared to admit that he already did. And they already paid him. They built the scheme around him, and they brought in a McVay-style offensive coordinator to make things even easier. Just everything about this offense says that Nico is the guy, so now I'm asking a different question. Was last season the floor? I'm not saying that I've got it all figured out. Nico still scares me in a weird way, not because of the role, not because of the offense, but because breakouts like this usually don't feel so clean, and when they do, I just start looking for a catch. CJ Stroud wasn't amazing last year, but are we already forgetting what he did in his rookie year and what he was doing for this offense, just uplifting everyone around him? That didn't just go away. I'm starting to think that last year might have just been a preview, and the year before that was really what Stroud is. If both of these pieces come together in the same season, it could get nuts. The ceiling's already on tape, and if we're still hesitating, maybe that says more about us than him. So if that's what a breakout actually looks like, this next guy is a post-hype trap that I just can't stop circling back to. I fell for Calvin Ridley last year, I'll admit that, and now I'm catching myself doing the same mental math again, which probably means I'm about to get hurt twice. He finished as the wide receiver 30 last year, but played in all 17 games, cleared 1,000 yards, and that's what's messing with me. The offense was a complete disaster. Levis couldn't hit a throw, half of those targets weren't even catchable, but now Ridley's the clear wide receiver 1 again, and they bring in Cam Ward. Rookie QB, cannon of an arm, but still, a rookie. But Ridley's going in round 7, wide receiver 32 on most boards, so I'm sitting over here asking the same question over and over again. Is this the post-hype breakout, or are we just paying for the ghost of a player who just used to be a wide receiver 1? I've done this before. I've seen the targets, the air yards, and just the overall depth chart, and I start convincing myself that that's enough. But I've gone back and watched the tape, every single target from last season, games where Will Levis gave him double-digit targets, and I swear half of them never had a shot. These weren't drops, these weren't miscommunications, just not catchable. Not even close. And it stayed that way for most of the season. 18.6% of Ridley's targets from Levis were inaccurate. That's the worst stretch of quarterbacking I've ever seen, and definitely I've ever seen him deal with. But here's the thing, Ridley still cleared 1,000 yards, still was top 15 in target share, still led the NFL in air yards. That's not noise, that's signal. And now they're finally shifting the offense around him. New OC, rookie quarterback, but the plan, at least everything coming out of camp, is shorter throws, faster releases, actual screen usage for Ridley, where he saw just 8 targets all season last year, and that's about to change. They put his locker right next to Cam Ward's, they're running extra reps in practice, and they're watching film together. I just keep coming back to this. What if last year's wide receiver 30 finish was Ridley's floor? I know I've been burned before, I know the red flags, but how many wideouts in the wide receiver 30 range got 120 targets, ton of deep ball volume and a system that's actively trying to make his life easier, that's what's messing with me. It doesn't feel like a player problem. It feels like the first time in years that the offense might actually be on his side, and I just don't know how much that's worth yet. The thing that really got me was the price never really recovered. Not after 1,000 yards, not after playing all 17 games, not after surviving Will Levis. We moved on like he failed, but he didn't. He just didn't live up to that round 3 ADP. That never should have been there in the first place, probably. Now he's going in the 7th or 8th round as a true wide receiver 3, but he's still the wide receiver 1 on a team that paid him like a 1, schemes him like a 1, and just drafted a quarterback whose first quote was Ridley is a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL. That's when it hit me. Maybe it's not about Ridley needing to prove anything. Maybe it's us still pricing in last year's disappointment when the floor already held. And if this is the floor, what are we actually afraid of? I'm not pretending I've solved this one. Ridley still scares me. That hasn't changed, but now I'm not scared for the same reasons. It's not the role, it's not the offense, it's not the upside. It's just that I've been burned before, and part of me still thinks I deserve it. But round 7, wide receiver 32, I can live with that. I'm not drafting him to save my team. I'm drafting him to sit on my bench and remind me that I might have been wrong. And honestly, that might be enough. By the way, if you want my full draft kit, free rankings, sleepers, busts, cheat sheets, go to fantasyaccelerator.com or hit the first link in the description. You'll get full access to my year-round fantasy system until week 1 for free, but I'm not promising that that deal's gonna stay up all summer, so go claim it. All right, that last guy was about redemption at wide receiver. Now let's talk about a rookie running back who's already earning some veteran praise. I've passed on Omarion Hampton more than once already, and every time I've regretted it a little more. At some point, you gotta stop calling it caution and start admitting that it's fear. He's going right around pick 48, running back 19 off the board, 4th round, and I keep telling myself that's fair until I look at what's actually happened. The Chargers gets burned a 22nd overall pick. That's not a depth piece, that's not a stash. A 1st round back in an era where teams barely take running backs at all in the first few rounds. But instead of a clean runway, we're getting a ton of coach speak. Harvey said that they have 2 starters. We had Greg Roman call Hampton the total package. Which one is it? Because they're still leaning on phrases like 1-2 punch, which isn't great. And Najee, that's who everyone wants to talk about, got $5 million and hasn't missed a game in 4 years. That's not a flyer, that's probably a fixture. So I'm stuck in this weird mental loop. The talent is obvious. He's a rookie. Of course, there's some uncertainty there, but the capital, that's pretty heavy. Even the quotes are positive in a weird, vague way, and yet every time I think about taking him in the 4th, some part of me whispers, what if they slow play this? It's not that I don't believe in the player, it's that I'm afraid the situation might drag him down before the breakout can even start. He's a rookie, he's in a timeshare, he's got a $5 million vet ahead of him, and yet I still come back to the same thought. If they really wanted Najee to be the guy, would they have drafted a running back in the 1st round? The answer is, I don't think so. I don't think it's a depth piece. It feels more like an eventual centerpiece to me. The more I look, the gap starts to widen a little bit. Hampton handled over 300 touches last year, cleared over 2,000 yards, scored 17 touchdowns. He also caught nearly 40 passes on an offense that collapsed without its former quarterback, and somehow he still was more efficient. Circling back to Greg Roman, he just called him the total package. So even though Harbaugh keeps saying that they have 2 starters, only one of them is 22 years old with 1st round draft capital, and a skill set that actually fits this new system, because Najee was fine last year, but he did lose his receiving role to Jalen Warren, and he's only here on a 1-year deal, certainly not to carry the team. I've just been down this road before with rookie running backs. Last year, I waited a little bit too long on Jahmyr Gibbs, told myself that one would be a slow burn, and by the time I trusted it, the ceiling games were already gone, and I didn't have them near as much as I should have. And now I'm sitting here looking at Hampton, and I keep thinking, what if we're already in the slow burn? Because it's not going to be clean in September. Najee's going to get first drives. The coaching quotes will still say like this, vague, but what happens in October? When Hampton gets 15 touches, 18 touches, and then 22 touches. I keep looping back to that version of where this season goes. The one where the rookie isn't just a flash in the pan and he quietly takes over. And the more I try and talk myself out of it, the more everything, the capital, the tape, the usage, the quotes, just keep pulling me back in, and I start to think this might not be the lead up to the breakout, this might be the breakout and the moment that we're all gonna regret not getting on more aggressively. We're just pretending the wrong things right now. I kept thinking this was a stash, one of those picks that you sit on, wait for the vet to slip, and then maybe you cash in by Thanksgiving. But then you realize this is up there with some of the highest running back selections in the draft in quite some time. Only 10 backs have gone higher since 2010. So if we wait until this is completely clear, players like Devon Achane would never hit us in the face. And if we're talking about similarities there, honestly, Hampton, he's bigger, more college production, and has a clearer path to more work than either of those guys did. And for some reason, I'm hesitating again, and that's when it hit me. I wasn't passing on the name because of Najee, I was passing because I didn't want to feel stupid for trusting a rookie so soon. But that fear is not protecting me, it's keeping me from the type of swings that win leagues. So I'm not waiting anymore. This staff is already talking like it's his job to take. Then maybe the only thing left to do is believe that he can actually take it. I kept telling myself I would wait one more week, one more report, one more sign, but I think I was just stalling because taking a rookie this early forces you to commit. You're committing to being too early, you're committing to ultimately just being wrong. And that's actually what's scary, that wait and see game. All it ever really gets you is a front row seat to someone else's breakout. So this time I'm swinging first, and I'll just deal with the miss if it comes. So that was the raw upside in a rookie body, but now we're heading straight into the most disrespected tight end in all of fantasy. I keep calling George Kittle boom or bust, but last year he was the most productive tight end in fantasy, so maybe the problem isn't him, maybe it's that we still don't know how to process what he actually is. He's going in the 4th, tight end 3 by ADP, and somehow it still feels like we're bracing for disappointment with this guy. Like we keep waiting for the cliff to come and then act surprised when it doesn't. Because the story hasn't really changed with Kittle. Yeah, he splits targets, but the efficiency of this offense is what we really want. It's frustrating when he's blocking, yeah, but the offense kind of moves in waves. It moves on different matchups and a lot of things that we can't necessarily control week to week, but then you look up in some of the ceiling games, it's kind of exactly what you want depending on your format. Because last year, he led all tight ends in fantasy points per game. He was second best in yards per route run by any tight end in the last decade. So this is one of those situations where we actually have to circle back and see if we're contradicting ourselves because the usage isn't broken, the production is still elite, and the offense hasn't really changed. If anything, things have gotten better now that Debo's not there. So why are we the ones pulling back? That's the part that I can't shake with Kittle. The data keeps saying that this one is a clear go, but the draft room keeps treating him like he's on his way out. And I'm just not sure who's wrong yet. But the stat that I keep circling back to is George Kittle led all fantasy tight ends in points per game. It wasn't Kelsey, it wasn't Laporta, it wasn't McBride, it was Kittle. And just like looking back at it, I don't necessarily remember it being like that consistent every week thing, even though it did feel a little more consistent last year than in past. It was still just those massive spikes that got you there, like week winning spikes at a position that's kind of brutal. We all remember the 3 touchdown game against Arizona, and that's what our brain wants to remember. It's the 3 touchdown games, it's the long runs, it's all the breaking tackles, and then immediately it wants to bring us back the next week to it was a fluke, or it can never happen like that again. It's that hesitation that's really just starting to bake itself into this ADP, and it happens every single year with guys like this. Guys where it's definitely not the talent, it's not the system, it's that we've trained ourselves to fear against those quiet games that are probably going to happen, but at tight end, they're going to happen anyways. So that's really it. The efficiency that we're going to get from a guy like this, the big plays, the spikes, that's a feature, not a bug. The volatility is really what we need. If we're just going to keep defaulting back to the same take where it's boom or bust, we're going to miss on players like this, and these are the type of players you need if you want to get first place, and that's what we're after. You guys remember when Shanahan was talking about him going into the Seattle game? I think Debo was out as well. He was talking about how Kittle, when he's healthy, when everything opens up, he's our mismatch guy. So yeah, is he just a blocker? No. Is he just a decoy? Absolutely not. Just look at how they used him down the stretch last year in play action, in mismatches, in goal line situations, all of those things, those high equity touches. It's starting to feel like we're just reacting to our hesitation because it's not about volume anymore, because when volume finally shows up, this weapon is locked and loaded. But the thing that finally flipped me was realizing that I'm not actually waiting for George Kittle to bounce back. I'm scared to admit it, but he never really fell off. And sometimes we just need to revisit the way we see players. If we call him volatile, high risk, unpredictable, that doesn't necessarily mean it's still the case. Like, if we're just going to hold on to the same takes from 2018, what are we really doing here? Because I'm having a hard time naming another tight end who's been so consistent year after year than George Kittle, honestly. He just finished top 5 again at the position on just 91 targets, so maybe the problem isn't the spike weeks. Maybe it's us just chasing safety at a position where that's not going to happen very often. And maybe Kittle's one of the last ones left who can actually win us a week. Because let's be honest, most tight ends are boring. They're floor plays where you're hoping to get 5 catches for 50 yards and a touchdown. Kittle's not that. I don't think he's ever been that, so that's good news. And once I stopped pretending that I needed a reliable tight end option, I realized Kittle might be the only one that's worth still chasing given the prices. I'm not saying he's going to do it every single week. Kittle still makes me nervous sometimes, not because he disappears, but because he doesn't play the position that we're used to seeing it played. But I think that's maybe why he's still super undervalued in fantasy drafts, because if he can't be boxed into a certain archetype, then maybe he can't be safe either. But come on, we're done chasing this predictability, especially at the tight end position, because I'd rather chase guys that can actually tilt the matchup in my favor, not because of volume, but for a guy like Kittle, kind of just because of overall violence and upside. And if it's still sitting there in round 5 somehow, I can live with whatever comes next. But if you want my top 150 rankings for free, just hit the first link in the description. That's what I'm using in every single draft this year, but if your league gets it before you do, you're probably cooked. I didn't even know who RJ Harvey was the first time I saw him. I just caught a run on TV, paused, and opened my phone to check who number 7 was, because whatever that was, it didn't look normal. Now he's going in round 6, sometimes 7, and I get why no one's panicking. We're not even sure if he has the job yet, but I can't stop coming back to this. If any other rookie had this profile, 4.440 speed, 96 percentile dominator, and day 2 capital, we'd be calling him a sleeper. Instead, he's just sitting there behind a backfield that is totally beatable, by the way. And every time I scroll past him on the draft board, I feel like I'm the one that's missing something at this point, because the deeper I go, the harder it is to justify silence. The backfield is wide open, and RJ Harvey might be the most explosive guy in that room. So why is no one talking about him? That's what's messing with me. I've been burned chasing these ambiguous backfields before, but a lot of times it actually does work out. But this one doesn't feel that murky, actually. It just feels underpriced. The stat that won't leave my head is that he had over 300 touches last year. That's not a role player, that's a workhorse, and one of the only ones in college football who actually was the offense. So he earned those touches, and he was top 10 in yards after contact, top 5 in breakaway run rate, and had double the missed tackles for that the next guy had on his team. So I'm sitting here staring at this rookie running back profile that looks like it should have gone in round 2, but at the very least, he's going to be threatening for 15 touches per game eventually. This was one of those offense we were just begging for an elite running back to drop into, because they need a lead guy. It's just the loop that I keep getting stuck in is, if the role's available, the coach likes him, and the tape backs it up, why hasn't the market reacted? Why is he still stuck behind Estime, who hasn't been practicing, or behind Dobbins, who's on his 3rd team in 2 years, or behind Jaleel, who they didn't even trust with 5 carries a game down the stretch? Remember I said this, I just keep waiting to see something in camp where he immediately goes up 2 to 3 rounds on his draft board. Some quote that sparks interest around him and people start looking at it a little bit deeper like we are. Or maybe I'm just seeing something that's not there. It's possible that we're just ignoring something that's already happening. And that's what's messing with me. The flip for me didn't come from like an actual stat. It kind of came from, it felt like I was just lying to myself after a while. I kept telling myself that he was just a good athlete, good tape, great combine, but probably just a depth piece on this team. The kind of guy that we would like in theory, but never really trust enough to draft in fantasy. And then I went back and watched it again, not just the big runs, but the hard runs, the cutback vision, and really just a lot of second effort yards. And maybe more importantly, like what he was doing in pass protection. And it kind of made me realize that this isn't just a bet on traits, it's a bet on, is he NFL ready? And I think that he is, and don't take my word for it, Sean Payton has basically said the same thing. The quote that I haven't heard many people mention is that RJ processes faster than most rookies we've ever had here. I feel like that's one of the best compliments you could ever get as a young player, especially from a coach like Sean Payton. It's just a line that kind of hit differently the more times I read it, because now I kind of see what he meant. It's not just that Harvey can win the job, it's that he might already be understanding the offense better than guys that he's competing with. That's the shift. So I basically just stopped asking myself if he could earn touches and started wondering if he's the one that they're already scheming for. And even if that's only half true, it's not a situation where we can just wait on the breakout. We don't ask ourselves enough, what if we are wrong? And what if we're just completely mislabeling this entire situation and he's the bona fide starter already? This one's not a lock. It's definitely not a flag plant just yet. But if we look up in September and RJ Harvey is getting 15 touches per game, are we really going to be surprised? Or are we just going to be mad that we didn't say it out loud sooner?